Hello, and welcome back to our book recap series from CNMS Advising. Today, we're going to be recapping Deep Work by Cal Newport. So, this book, Deep Work Rules for Focused Success in a Distracted World, is really amazing for a lot of reasons for students because it teaches you kind of how to work better with the time that you have. So, Cal Newport is a professor of computer science at Georgetown in Washington, D.C. He also hosts a podcast called Deep Questions with Cal Newport. And part of the reason he writes these books is because he advocates for having a healthy work life balance. He has children and a family, and he likes to spend time with them. And he also writes books about how to be efficient with time, avoid burnout, and become the best at what you do. He really likes to help others kind of understand the nature of doing really well at your job or being a student or whatever you do while also having a really full, wonderful, rich life. So, first of all, what is deep work? Deep work is the act of focusing on something without interruption for long periods of time. It pushes you to your limits, but it's rewarding because it can help you learn or achieve new things in a deep and lasting way. And I'm sure you can think of examples for why this might be important to you. Even if you can't really think of any applicable things in your own life right now for deep work, you could probably think of your future career. For instance, what if you want to be a scientist in a lab? You have to be really good at focusing on something without interruption for a long period of time to get any reasonable work done in a lab. So, this is really important for you. That's a skill that you need to work on and learn. If you are interested in going medical school, this might be useful because you're going to have to learn really quickly and efficiently if you are studying anatomy, for instance. There are lots of reasons why deep work can be useful to you. And if you want, you can pause the video now and think about some ways that deep work might be able to help you in the career that you want to have, or even as a student now. So it's important to also define shallow work when we're talking about deep work so that we understand what we're trying to avoid when we're doing deep work. So shallow work is exactly the opposite of deep work. Basically, it consists of tasks that don't require a lot of focus or brain power. And this type of work distracts you from deep work. And we all have shallow work in our lives. It's actually quite important. And, we need to do shallow work to do errands and all sorts of other things. So, if you want, you can pause the video right now and think about what might be types of shallow work in your life. But I have a few examples. One is emails. Emails in the professional world are often very distracting. You may experience emails as just any kind of notification from your phone, your device, whatever it is. It's important to respond to these things. Sometimes they're from a parent asking you to do something later that day. Sometimes they're just from a friend asking you to make plans. Sometimes they're from professors reminding you about certain things, if it's via email or Blackboard, whatever it is. Every time you get a notification or you go to your inbox or open your phone, it's going to distract you from deep work. So anything that involves notifications, that's shallow work. Not unimportant, but shallow. The next is active recall. Active recall is things like going through flashcards for an exam. Maybe you're trying to memorize a bunch of things for Bio 141 and you have them on flashcards digitally and you're working on those. That's not asking you to learn a new thing or focus intently on something. It's actually trying to train you to not need to think too hard about things, to have things in your long-term memory. You're trying to get those things from the thoughtful part of your memory to the part that doesn't require a lot of mental focus at all, so that you just automatically kind of know those things. So active recall practice would be, again, maybe flashcards, maybe reviewing different types of chemistry problems that you need to know for an exam. So you've already learned them, and now you're just reviewing them. That's an example of active recall practice. It's not very deep. You're trying to get it to be shallow, in fact. And another might be logistical tasks. So doing laundry, running errands, going grocery shopping, those kinds of things. Again, those are important things. You need to go grocery shopping. You need to do your laundry. You need to remember to respond to notifications, for instance. All those things are important, but they're going to take your mental focus away from deep work. So it's important to kind of get them done at other times. And so that's a big part of shallow work, is like thinking about in your day, in your schedule, when you're actually going to do those things, because that way they don't take up space in your working memory when you're trying to focus on something more deeply. So even if you haven't done that laundry, if you put it into a schedule or a to-do list or a calendar, all of a sudden you're going to be not thinking about it because you know you've offloaded that from your brain. So think about time for shallow work and time for deep work. So when is deep work appropriate? We've just defined a bunch of shallow work. So let's talk about deep work now. When's it appropriate? Well, learning new information. Maybe that is if you are, let's go back to Bio 141. You're learning about DNA replication and you haven't had that class yet, but you're pre-reading for it because it's really important to pre-read before class for a big content class like this so that you understand what's going on in the lecture. So you really need to focus because you haven't learned this before. There's a lot of details. You know you're going to have to understand it really well. You're going to have to really understand the processes. You're going to have to memorize a lot of this. So you really want to focus, not be distracted. Another would be learning new skills. So again, going back to that Chem 101 example, maybe it's not exam time, you're in the middle of an exam period, but you need to learn a new type of problem to kind of move on to the next bigger thing. So within one block of a unit of Chem 101, let's say you need to learn how to do stoichiometry and you really aren't comfortable with this yet. And maybe you've had a class on it, but it's not familiar to you. So you really need to practice it and you really need to focus on learning it and getting the steps correct the first time. That would be a time where you could do deep work. You can set aside some time to really hone in on stoichiometry. And another might be working on a big project. Now, this can be anywhere. You'll probably have big projects in your GEP courses, for instance, like essays and assignments, maybe even group work. If you are in a computer science class, this is the example I normally use. This could be really important. Like if you've got a project coming up and you know that it's due in 2 weeks, but you really won't be able to do it all in the last day because it won't be good, but also you're going to be really stressed and you want to be working towards it steadily. And you want to be giving yourself a good amount of time, focused work when you're super rested to do it. That's a great time to do deep work and schedule some deep work. So next we're going to talk about how to do deep work. So the first thing to do is block off time in your schedule. Like I said, we need to block off shallow work time too, but actually using a schedule to think about what you're going to do all day can really, really, really help when it comes to getting stuff actually done and being able to focus on the task at hand and not what you need to do next. So block off time in your schedule for deep work. And you can just write deep work Bio 141, read DNA replication chapter, whatever it is. Make sure that there's a specific task that you know you're supposed to do. Block off time in your schedule and make sure you know where you're going to go. It's going to be quiet, distraction free, all that stuff. So the next thing you got to do is silence your distractions. So if you're working on a laptop, make sure your notifications are disabled. If you're working on a tablet, same thing, notifications disabled. If your phone's with you, because it probably will be, distractions disabled, notifications, all that stuff. Phone away. So maybe you can reach for it in your bag, but it's not on the desk, it's not in sight. We do not want that image of that phone even distracting us. Even that can break the focus. So if you know that normally people try to get in touch with you all the time and they're going to be worried that you're not responding, you can tell them, hey, I'm not going to respond until noon today because I really have to learn this bio thing. Just so you know. So let people know. If your parents are normally trying to get in touch with you, make sure they know so that they're just aware that you're not going to respond and it's okay. They don't panic. No one panics because they don't hear from you. And the next thing, work on one task until the end of the time block. So you don't need to work super continually on the task, although the more you do deep work, likely your focus will be kind of strengthened in terms of the amount of time you can spend focusing. So that's kind of like a muscle. So the more you work it, the longer you'll be able to go without a break. But do think about taking short breaks frequently. So I like to encourage people to use the Pomodoro method, which is to work with 25 minutes of deep focus, 5-minute break. So you can use the Pomodoro method here but make sure that you're using maybe a YouTube timer. I'll put a YouTube timer link in the description box of this video if you're looking for one. That way you can still kind of have it in your browser if you're using a tablet or a laptop, and you can still hear that timer ring where you don't really have to like be distracted by anything else. It's just a helpful kind of timer that's in the background of your life. And when you take your break, make sure that you're doing something that's not breaking the focus. So have a snack, drink a water, maybe go to the bathroom, stretch your legs out a little bit. You could walk around if you're in a place where you can do that, or you can literally just stare out the window. Like anything that you can do to just kind of shut your brain down for 5 minutes is going to really be able to help you focus again if you're finding that your focus starts to drift. And one more tip here, I tell students to do this all the time if they get distracted easily, but it really helps sometimes to keep a piece of paper and a pen next to you so that if things come across your mind that you really don't want to forget, like, oh, I really need to call this person later, or I need to make that appointment, or I need to do my laundry, and it's not in your schedule, you can write it down and then get it out of your working memory, because our working memory can only hold so many items. And if you try to hold do laundry later in your working memory, it's going to take up a spot that you could be giving to the deep work that you're trying to do. And so this is going to make your work less good. So if you have a piece of paper next to you, you can offload that thought like it's an external hard drive, and then you know you're not going to forget it because it's right there later for you to pick back up when you're done with your deep work. All right, so why is deep work important? It's important for you as a current college student because it allows you to work efficiently when you're learning something new. It also allows you the freedom of free time because it doesn't take all day. As a professional, deep work is a skill that will serve you well in the workplace for your ability to accomplish tasks and learn new skills. So it's also, like Cal Newport advocates, it's kind of something that can help you be really efficient at what you need to get done so that you have more time to give to the things you actually like doing. So, this in turn is going to help you avoid burnout. So, you won't be spending all day trying to learn this biology. You're going to say, I've got 2 hours to learn this bio, and then I got to go to class, and then I have to do this and this and this. But you know what? 8 p.m., I'm done with my work because I've got it all scheduled. I know I'm going to stay on task because I'm really good at avoiding distractions. And then I can play video games for 2 hours with the friends on my hall, or I can go hang out with my friends, or I can do a face mask and paint my nails because that's what self care looks like for me. Whatever it is, you will have more time to do that and be able to shut that brain down and say, this is not time for work. I have accomplished all I need to do. And that is a really good feeling. Okay, so let's talk about some examples. So I'm going to go back to the bio, the chem, and the computer science examples because those are frequent classes that CNMS students are enrolled in. Okay, so here's an example. You're taking Bio 141 this semester. Maybe you're taking any other bio class. This applies to them all. There's a lot of new material, and you need to be prepared for each lecture because they move quickly. So you block off 2 hours every Tuesday and Thursday mornings to read the textbook sections relevant to class. This is imagining that you have class on Tuesdays and Thursday afternoons. You can modify this to make more sense for whatever your schedule has on it. So during this time, you read the learning objectives and the end of chapter questions before you read the section. Then you create flashcards while you read instead of taking notes. You're taking notes as flashcards because then you can use those for active recall practice later. And you're writing down anything that confuses you. And this way you can ask those questions during the lecture if they don't get answered automatically. And that really helps you get more out of your lecture. And it also helps you avoid not knowing later and then having to fill in those gaps and try to kind of make sense of them later. So it's really helpful to do all these things. You'll also just be able to keep up with the lecture. It's not going to feel like it's moving at the speed of light. All right, example 2, chemistry. You're taking Chem 102 this semester. The problems are harder than they were in Chem 101, probably because you're building upon the skills that you've already learned, and you want to learn as much as possible from each class. So what's your deep work look like? Let's say the class is on Monday, Wednesday, Friday in the mornings. So you block off an hour every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday after class to go over practice problems. You use the assigned textbook. There is an assigned textbook for Chem 101 and Chem 102. It's free online. And you find problems similar to the ones you worked on in class. You try to solve the problems without using your notes, and then you check the answers. If they're wrong, you go back and do them again using your notes or the textbook for help. And if anything is still just really confusing, you just can't get the right answer, you go to drop-in tutoring. And so maybe somewhere in your planner you've got written down the hours for drop-in tutoring of Chem 102 on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And maybe you're doing all this stuff in the library really close to where drop-in tutoring is. So it's just easier for you to get there. You don't have to like make a huge move to get over there, which is going to really be difficult just logistically for you. So you're making it easy for yourself. Okay. Last example is going to be our CMSC 201 example. So let's say you're taking CMSC 201 this semester, and there are like a bunch of big projects that require a lot of work. They're daunting, they involve many different tasks. You just don't really know how to even wrap your head around this. That can be really difficult, especially if you're not looking at kind of a list of tasks, it's just one big task. It's really easy to procrastinate. So don't fall into this trap. Let's talk about the deep work strategy. So you block off time each week, maybe as much as necessary for 2 hours at a time, and it's to work on these projects. You work slowly and deliberately, focusing only on this task for the whole time. If something confuses you, you take it to the Computing Success Center. Maybe you're working nearby, just like that drop in tutoring example, or maybe office hours if that's more helpful for your schedule. If you have a list of tasks for the project, you check them off as you finish them to boost motivation. It can actually be helpful to make a task list before you start the work for that day. And this may be something you need to do 3 times a week, maybe just once a week, maybe twice a week, maybe only once every other week, depending on how often you have these projects for the class. But again, you can apply this to any class that has assignment based stuff like an essay for a psych class that you're in, maybe. Whatever it is, you can find ways for deep work to apply to you. So if these examples didn't apply to you, or there are more classes you're taking that you know will require deep work, think of some examples that do apply to you. So look at your course syllabi and figure out how deep work strategies can help you succeed. Okay, let's talk about a few other tips for success. Use a calendar to practice time blocking. I alluded to this earlier. I said it's really helpful to have separate time for deep work and shallow work. Make sure things are outlined. And this also includes putting things you're looking forward to that aren't necessarily work things, because this will help you work more efficiently. If you know you have something you're looking forward to later that's coming up, you'll be more likely to work efficiently and enforce a stopping time. So, these are the next 2 tips actually. Don't just give up your hobbies, give yourself boundaries. So, again, use the calendar to give yourself those boundaries and to know that you're going to have something you're looking forward to later. Again, find anything that you can think of for ways to make yourself happy every day to avoid that burnout. And then also along these lines, set a clear stopping time for your work and enforce it. So even if things don't feel like they're totally done by 8 p.m. or whatever your stopping time is, it's often better to stop even though you might not be completely done. Finish your task, go to bed, do your thing that you have to do later, whatever it is, and just try and compartmentalize this until the next day. Unless an assignment is due and you really have to finish it, it's often better to work on it with fresh eyes in the morning. So maybe get up a little bit earlier to finish this task. But again, avoiding burnout is absolutely paramount here, because students burn out. They really have a hard time getting through the whole rest of the semester. It can mess you up a lot. So, really try to have boundaries with your work. Make sure that you give yourself something to look forward to every day. Use that calendar to enforce that time blocking. Be specific about where you're going to do things, when you're going to do things, what are you going to do during that time. Give yourself specific tasks. Maybe before you stop your work, that boundary at the end of working is to make tomorrow's to do list and schedule and make sure it's all ready to go before you finish work. So the next morning you get up and it's ready. You don't have to think about it too much. You just start working and don't have to, worry about making the schedule in the moment. So thank you so much for watching. Um, stay tuned for some more book recap videos that can help you. And we hope this one helped you a lot today. See you next time.